Did you read
Action.
Dennis the Menace?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Dad, could you tell us your job growing up as a magazine salesman?
I was just fresh out of high school. The year was 1949. I was looking for work, and there was an ad in the paper. They wanted magazine salesmen. Of course, I'd never sold anything in my life, but I thought I'll give it a try. So I go down and I met the manager in the evening, and he said to me, have you got a pair of slacks and a good shirt? And I said, yes. He said, you'll need that. And I said, what about blue jeans? No blue jeans. So he said, meet us here in the morning at 8 o'clock and I'll distribute you out around the city. And we had to go across the Manette Bridge. And so I think I did make one sale that day, and probably $8 for a women's magazine. And so I worked for a week and didn't set the world on fire with my sale, but he said, would you like to go with us? I had a Ford Woody, a 1949 Ford Woody, and he had the tailgate let down and he could put our suitcases out there, and there were 6 of us. So we left, worked our way down the coast in Oregon, and wound up in Oakland, California. And so I wasn't doing too good as a salesman, and I didn't make my quota every morning. You'd have set a quota. He would, and I would either agree or not. That was $25, and that's not much of a quota. So I go out, and the end of the day, I hadn't made it. I might make $15 or $18, but not 25. So then he said, now Verne, I'm going to have to send you out after you come in and wash up and have a bite to eat, and then you're going to need to go out again. So last time I went out with this guy who was a real hustler, and we came to a high-rise, and they have a list of people and what floor they're on. So we had a guy on the 8th floor by the name of Tony. And so we rang the bell, and he said, yeah, this is Tony. Said, hey, Tony, we want to talk to you. Can we come up? He said, come ahead. So I rang the buzzer. We went right up. And he was setting up a television, which in '49 was kind of complicated. But he said, what are you guys up to? And said, well, we're selling magazines. And this guy got right ahead of me, brought it in ahead of me, and he said, well, what do you got? And I think his name was Bill, handed him the list, and he said, I like this one, and that's a good one, and I haven't had this one ever in my life, and this is my favorite. So there were 4 magazines. I think it came to a total of $42. So Bill was happy, and Tony was happy, and And so the guy said, well, I'm going back to the hotel. You want to keep working? And I said, no, I'll go back with you. So we got back, and I decided that was the last day and night work I was going to do. So I went up to the manager's office. He wasn't there, but his wife said, now, don't do anything rash. She said, what was his name? It don't matter. Joe wants to talk to you. So when Joe got back, he called my room and said, I'm back. Verne, come on up, we'll talk. So I went up and he said, what's up? I said, I'm going to quit. Oh, he said, no, this is Friday. Tomorrow is Father's Day, and fathers don't have much sales resistance like women. So at least work tomorrow. I said, no, I'm through. He said, what did you make today? And I said, $12. And he said, where is it? I handed it to him, and he fished through it and found a $5 bill. He gave it to me, and he said, well, you can make it back to Bremerton on this, can't you? And I said, how? I don't have a car. I don't have a bus. I said, when I joined up with you, you said if I couldn't make it, that you would buy me a bus fare and I could come home to Bremerton. Well, I'm not firing you, you're quitting. So he said, give me that. So I took the $5. I spent the night in the hotel, got up that morning, and I packed my 2 suitcases. They were pressed cardboard, real fancy, and headed out the door, and I went to the nearest gas station. I got a map of Oakland, and so I went out and sat on a bench. I took my pen and I marked the route I needed to go to get to I-5 North, and then I started out. And even before I got to I-5 North, there was a guy driving slow, and he hollered at me, "You'd like a ride?" I said, "I sure would." "Are you going towards I-5? And he said, "I'm going right on I-5 for a few miles." Perfect! So I put my suitcases in the back, and we rode and went out there, and he had to stop for a beer, and I didn't drink beer, but I said, "I'll go in with you." And so 3 or 4 beers, he come back out and drove me about 20-30 miles and said, "I gotta turn to the left, I gotta go see my sister." So he let me out, and I started thumbing a ride again. Got a ride with 3 guys in a convertible, and the wind whipping through our hair, and I was in the back seat. And so it was getting kind of late by then, probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and came to a junction. They said, "We're going to the right." I said, "Okay, thanks a lot." Got out, got another ride within minutes, and this was a traveling salesman, and he was going to Redding, California. Wow, that was about 80-90 miles, so boy, was I glad to get that ride. I got out up there, and I knew that road. I'd been down there one time before, and so it's about 6 in the evening. I still have my $5 bill. Hadn't had anything to eat that day, and about 8 o'clock it was getting cold and I wasn't catching any rides. So I decided, well, I'm going to get my shirt and my 2 sweaters out of my suitcase and I'm going to sleep under a bush over there. And they had floodlights coming out of the back of a big, I don't know, bar and grill or something. So at 2 a.m. I woke up and I'm just shaking all over, and this is not going to work, I said. So I got to find a better place to sleep. So I grabbed my suitcases and went up to the door of this place, and I knocked and they opened it. I said, is there any cover charge to get in here? And he said, no. And he looked at his watch, he said, no, come on in. So I went in, I sat at the bar. He said, what can I give you tonight? And I said, I'd like a cup of that black coffee. So it was right to the bottom when he finished pouring. That was all that was there. So I sat there and sipped on that and got warm a little bit, and I quit shaking. And so I'm thinking to myself, now, where am I going to sleep tonight? And I remember down in the little town of Reading, a big car lot, the lights all around. It had a big chain around the outside of all the cars were inside, and on the store side of the street. So I thought, now, if they haven't locked the cars all up, I picked out a Cadillac that there was no light shining in it. The doors were open. I put my suitcases in the back and got in the front. I could stretch all the way out. And I slept with my head and shoulders away from the horn, because it probably roll over in the night and honk the horn. So I didn't want to do that. So shoot, at daylight the sun popped in there and I grabbed my suitcases and closed the door, and up the hill I went. And within 5 minutes I got a ride with the drunk and 2 of his buddies. And so I said, he said, where are you heading, young man? I said, I'm going to Oregon. And he said, we're heading that way ourselves. Come on in. So got up there, and he said, now what is a good-looking young man like you going to Oregon for? And I said, I'm going home. Where's home? I said, Washington. What city? Bremerton. He said, well, it'll be a while before you get in there. And so I had no breakfast, but it cost $1.25 for 1 cup of coffee, so I had to break my 5. So now I'm getting pretty hungry, and so they let me out. I don't remember what little town in Oregon, but I got out and I'm standing there looking around. I could see a little coffee shop to my left, so I walked down this hill and it's one of those with a flip-up front on it, and I walked up there, and he said, "How could I help you?" I said, "I want some of those macaroon cookies, and I want a soft drink." "What kind?" "Orange." And he said, "You want it in a bottle or a plastic cup?" "Plastic cup." So boy, did I enjoy those cookies. Had a little stool out to the side, and I went out there and I sat there in the shade, drank my pop and enjoyed my cookies, and then I went back up to the road, and in about 20 minutes I got a ride, and he was a salesman, and he sold dental tools. And he said, "I'm going to Salem, Oregon." I said, "That's right where I'm going." So, when we got up there, he said, "Hey, been a hot day. Would you like to come up and take a shower and freshen up?" And I said, "Sure." So I go up there, and he said, "Would you like a sandwich?" I said, "Man, yes." He said, "We'll go down to the coffee shop and get a sandwich." So he paid, and
Wow.
I gobbled that right down to the crust, and then I ate the crust.
Oh.
And so I got back out on the road, and it was just about dark, and he was only going about 40 miles, but he was going my way, so I got let out in this little town it was dark, so it was about 10 o'clock at night, maybe 9, and I walked down the street. Here's another big car lot with a chain around it. I couldn't find a Cadillac, but I found a Hudson, brand new Hudson. I tried the door, it was open. I was so tired, I just shoved my suitcases under the back of the car. Then I was right to sleep. But that morning I overslept, and when a car turned in to that used car lot, they kind of sprinkled rocks up on the side of the car, and boy, I raised my head, and the guy looking right at me, and I jumped out, grabbed my suitcase, and I was a half a block up the street when he's shaking his fist at me. But he went back and opened the door, and I hadn't done any harm. No, hadn't touched anything in there. So he went like that, "Go ahead." So I stopped at a little restaurant. I think I was down to about, maybe $2.50, half of my $5 bill. I had a donut and a cup of coffee. And back to hitchhiking. And I wanted to go to Portland, Oregon, because I had an uncle that lived there. And so he said, "I'm going right outside of Portland." He said, "It'll be real close." So I got out there. I knew the name of the street that my uncle lived on, Halverson Avenue, and it run from one side of Portland clear to the other side. So I got on the bus. A bus stopped that I stood by, and I paid a dime. we were traveling along, and it was a beautiful day, and I was nodding off, and when I woke up in about 10 minutes, I looked at the side street, or the street I was supposed to be on. It wasn't Halverson, so I rung the bell, and the driver stopped, and I got out. Well, it was a little detour, but I got right back on Halverson. I walked about 5 blocks, my 2 suitcases, and there was the right number, and I remembered the house. And I went in there and knocked on the door, probably 2 in the afternoon. My aunt came to the door. Well, Verne, what are you? And she looked all around outside. Where's your folks? I said, well, I guess they're home. I said, I'm going that way, but I thought I'd stop and visit with you and Clyde. Oh, we're so happy. Come on in. So she got on the phone and called my uncle, and she said, I'll bring Verne down, you can show him around. And he worked in a Chevrolet garage. So I go down there, and it was clean as a pin, and Uncle Clyde had taken a radiator off a car and rotted it out, and now he was soldering it, the tank on the bottom and the tank on the top, putting it back together, put air in it to see if there was any leaks, and found a couple. And so at 5:30 he punched his time card, and we went home, and Aunt Charlotte had a chicken dinner. Boy, oh boy, when that chicken dinner looked good to me. So I had a good supper, and she had cleaned out the spare bedroom, and I slept like a log in the bed for the first night, and that would be the 3rd night. So I stayed with them 2 days, got rested up and fattened up, and Sunday Uncle Clyde took me clear to the end of Halverson Street, where the main road, when I was heading for Wenatchee before I went to Bremerton. So got 4 more rides that day, got into Wenatchee about 6 in the evening. They hadn't started eating yet. So I spent the evening with them, and then hitchhiked over Stevens Pass to get back to Bremerton, or to Seattle. Got the ferry. I think I spent my last nickel on the ferry. I had $1.50 left, and I think the fare was $1.48 or something oddball thing. So then I got home and called my folks, and they come pick me up.
So what would you title that story, Dad?
Traveling on a $5 bill from Oakland, California to Bremerton, Washington.
Woohoo! Great story, Dad. And how old were you again?
18. I
Eight.
just graduated from high school.
Whoa, for an 18-year-old. Very cool story.